Look. Yeah, wala mama we wanted it. Wala mama we wanted it. Yenza kuhongera bihogo yego mwira naero na uja kubyina sanya munini uja kubyina sanya munini amashini mundu bijanira na yego mwira naero na rusumba rw'indengera rusumba rw'indengera yego mwira naero na baba we wanted it baba we wanted it yeza kuhongera bihogo yego mwira naero na Tanzania kurinda kuba zizanye murasoza na gutara muti iyo ari bwicana ndamurire bagabo byati cyagere ngo horo murinde nugamirwa z'u Rwanda ho muraye ntaro Ichu uryagerero kabatanye n'ahasana hasana amakoza rutabagiwe nuko iryo ni ikotaniro guma boneza amakoza ndangamirwa z'u Rwanda nuko nanone nuko boneza amakoza yarutabagiye guma boneza amakoza kurugamba rusirigwa
Your Excellencies, Honorable Minister Mujawa Maria, Minister of the Environment for Rwanda, Honorable Ministers present, ambassadors, captains of industry, leaders in civil society, distinguished guests, Murakaza neza i Kigali. Bonjour, mesdames et messieurs, and a warm welcome to the World Circular Economy Forum. My name is Tanya Habimana.
And I'm Nozipo Shabalala. What an absolute privilege it is for us, Tanya, to serve you over the next few days as your co-host. But in true African style, what we want to do is maybe extend a special welcome to our audiences around the world. There's more of us, Tanya, than just these four walls. So if you look at the camera over there, and you look at the camera over there, and you look at the camera over there, it's everyone joining us from around the world. So it is a special welcome to all of you. I do want to also give a special shout out to all the studios that that are joining us around the world. So I'm going to start right here in Kigali, Rwanda, and say Mwaramutse to all of you who are joining us from here. Then I'm going to make my way to my own home country in Cape Town, South Africa, and I'm going to say Dumelang Sanbonani. We are so happy to have you here. And then we go to Lagos. And we go to West Africa, we go to Lagos, Nigeria, and we say hello to our brothers and sisters. We go to Cameroon, and we say bonjour to all of you joining us. And of course, we go to the University of Tuscia in Italy, who's joining us. And we go ciao to our brothers and sisters joining us there. And then I have to get this one right, Tanya. This is to our brothers and sisters at the University of Turku in Finland. And we say ordeva to all of you this morning. And so what we really want to say, it is a special welcome from Africa to the world.
And it sounds like you got that one right. But let's also extend a very special recognition to the dance troupe Indangamirwa for their excellent performance, indigenous to this very city, Kigali, our pride and culture, Rwandan heritage. Et Nozi, avec la COP27 qui vient de se terminer en Égypte, c'est un moment très important pour avoir des conversations qui parlent de l'économie circulaire, où les acteurs, les innovateurs sont présents ici pour faire avancer la discussion pour la première fois sur le sol africain.
Absolutely, Tanya. Ladies and gentlemen, we are absolutely building on that momentum coming out of COP27, coming out of Africa's COP in Sharm el-Sheikh. And what we're going to do is that over the next few days, we're going to be tapping into some of the major opportunities for African nations, but the world at large, Tanya, to really explore some of the major themes that are shaping the continent's development and where circularity already is and still could play an even bigger role. Then again, Tanya, you'll have to excuse me again. I have to do something very African again. And that is, of course, to start with gratitude. That is who we are. We say thank you first. So we want to say a big thank you to the Republic of Rwanda for hosting us. We want thank you very much. And we want to say thank you to the African Circular Economy, to the African Circular Economy Network, to the Finnish Innovation Fund, Citra, and to every single international partner that has absolutely rolled up their sleeves to make the next couple of days a success. We say asante sana to all of you. Now, we are going to be touching, I want to speak a little bit about the themes. We're going to be touching on some incredible themes, everything from climate and nature to value chains to circular cities for the future. And ladies and gentlemen, that's just for today.
That's hard to believe when you think of all that has been jam-packed in this program. Et demain, ça continue.
Yeah.
Demain, nous allons parler des partenariats. Comment pouvons-nous poser des questions qui sont importantes pour catalyser les investissements nécessaires pour faire avancer l'agenda de l'économie circulaire? But for now, we will take a moment to hear from our very own minister. So please join me in welcoming to stage Her Excellency Minister Dr. Jeanne d'Arc Mujawa Maria to give her welcome remarks. Let's give her a round of applause.
Thank you very much. Honorable Hodi Hodum, Minister of State in charge of Environment, Nigeria. Honorable Terry Leitonen, Vice Minister for Environment and Climate Change, Finland. Mr. Kataimen, President of Finnish Innovation Fund, Citra. Mr. Asan Nakvi, Head of the Secretariat of the Partnership for Action on Green Economy, PAGE. Your Excellencies, ambassadors here present, senior officials, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, friends of environment, good morning, Ngaramutse. It's my great pleasure to welcome you to Rwanda for the 6th World Circular Economy Forum, held for the first time in Africa, even Global South. The government of Rwanda is delighted to host this important gathering in Kigali, one of the greenest and beautiful cities in the world. I would like to take this opportunity to thank the Finnish Innovation Fund, CITRA, the Africa Circular Economy Alliance, the Africa Circular Economy Network, and all partners who have brought this year's forum to life in Rwanda. The World Circular Economy Forum is a platform to share how governments, organizations, and businesses can seize new opportunities and gain a competitive advantage in the transition to low carbon and climate resilient economies. It also gives Rwanda and the continent the chance to showcase our traditions of environmental stewardship and explore how to make the transition to a circular economy a reality. Indeed, the circular economy represents the single greatest opportunity to supercharge green growth and job creation in Africa, and we look forward to sharing our experience and learning from others. Excellencies, distinguished guests, the economy-wide adoption of circular practices could help reduce global greenhouse gas emissions by 45%. A just and inclusive transition to a circular economy also offers opportunities to generate economic growth while ensuring social well-being and mitigating environmental risks. Investing in the circular economy is an investment in climate action, biodiversity protection, supply chain security, innovation, as well as job creation and skills development. Rwanda has taken a productive approach to integrate circularity approaches into our policies, strategies, and plans. In 2008, we officially banned plastic bags, and in 2019, we extended the ban to single-use plastics. It was these initiatives that opened people's eyes to the potential of the circular economy. We have revised our environment and climate change policy to incorporate the circular economy, and later today, we will launch our first ever circular economy action plan at the Kigali studio of the forum. As a result, numerous businesses are engaged in recycling, e-waste management, and investing in the sharing economy. We even have a matchmaking portal to connect producers and potential users of waste. Despite the progress made, companies wishing to go green and circular are still faced with a lack of suitable financial tools and funding to support their businesses in the growth. Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, let me once again thank CITRA, the Africa Circular Economy Alliance, the Africa Circular Economy Network, and all partners for organizing this important forum and for creating a meaningful platform for dialogue and exchange. Rwanda and Africa at large are ideal destinations for circular economy and green investments. Rwanda has also been privileged this year to be approved and endorsed as a member of PAGE, Partnership for Action on Green Economy, where support, among others, will help to create an enabling macroeconomic environment and financing to accelerate circular economy agenda for Rwanda. Today, let's take up that opportunity and build a circular economy that works for people and the planet so we can live in harmony with nature and ensure a sustainable future for generations to come. As I conclude, thank you for being with us, and I encourage you to explore our beautiful country and experiences Rwanda's warm hospitality and beauty. I now pass the floor to Mr. Katainen for his remarks, and I thank you very much for your kind attention.
Honorable ministers, dear guests and participants and organizers, what a pleasure to be here today in Kigali, and what a pleasure to welcome you all to the World Circular Economy Forum 2022. I'd like to first express my sincerest gratitude to the Republic of Rwanda for hosting this forum with us. Rwanda continues to have vision and dedication to embrace harmony among the people and with the nature in a way that is truly exceptional. We need such courage and confidence to act and keep our eyes on the future and on well-being of future generations, especially now as we are facing a number of different challenges. This year, the global community has been shaken by Russia's attack to Ukraine, and the global impacts on energy and food security are devastating. We need to come together and take action to build harmony and social stability. To succeed, we need to create economies that are more resilient of different kinds of threats, including the environmental ones. The circular economy is a good tool for this, and we have come a long journey with the World Circular Economy Forum. The WCEF was organized for the first time in 2017 in Helsinki. This was also the year when we Finns celebrated the 100th anniversary of our independence. Today, on the 6th of December, we are celebrating Finland's Independence Day for the 105th time. And I would like to, thank you. And I would like to take a moment to wish Happy Independence Day for all fellow Finns. It's a great honor to celebrate this day with our colleagues and friends from around the world by making sure that we protect our common planet for the future generations. In 2018, the WCEF journey took us to Yokohama, Japan. And 2019, we returned to Helsinki, but this time with broader participation. Due to COVID-19, in 2020, the forum was organized online with over 4,300 participants, discussing how can we reboot the economy after the pandemic. In 2021, we organized two events, WCEF plus Climate in Netherlands and online, and WCEF 2021 online from Toronto, Canada. In an interdependent world, the only way to advance systemic change is through global collaboration. Global crises affect us all, and we can learn from each other by sharing solutions and best practices. At this point, I'd like to invite our previous host countries, Japan, the Netherlands, and Canada, to provide their greetings for this year's WCEF audience. First, video greeting from Japan.
Excellencies, distinguished participants, I'm Hiroshi Ono, Vice Minister of Japanese Ministry of the Environment. We hosted the forum in 2019 in Yokohama and appreciate this opportunity. Japan is making a progress on transitioning to a circular economy. We established a circular economy roadmap and comprehensive circular solutions on plastics. Japan promotes the public-private partnership to strengthen circular business models, increasing collaboration across sectors. Japan is also supporting 43 African countries to address waste challenges and move toward the circular economy through African Clean Cities platform. Let us work together to create solutions. We can do it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Vice Minister Hiroshi Ono. And next, I will invite to the floor our Dutch friend Peter Diers. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Jyrki. Your Excellency, the dear guests, participants, friends, on behalf of the Minister of the Environment of the Netherlands, I would like to express my happiness of participating in this WCEF. Mr. Katainen already referred to it. Last year, the Netherlands had the honor and even a greater pleasure of co-hosting a very special edition of the World Circular Economy Forum, which we called WCF plus Climate. We feel very strongly about linking the circular economy to climate, as these topics are highly interlinked. Circular economy is a strong instrument in decarbonizing our societies, and I'm delighted to see that this topic is also on today's agenda. But the real focus of this meeting is Africa, an enormous continent that offers huge possibilities. And I feel the time to unlock and connect them is now. Dear friends, I look forward to 2 days full of inspiration and energy. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Peter. And the final greeting from Canada, it's also a video recording.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Stephen Guilbeault, Canada's Minister of Environment and Climate Change. The World Circular Economy Forum brings together business leaders, policymakers, and citizens with the collective goal of accelerating the global transition to a circular economy. We were honored to host it in Canada last year, and we understand its role as a critical platform that can change the trajectory of global narrative on circularity. And it's clear that momentum is building. Several circular economy events happened on the margins of COP27 in Egypt last month. The African Circular Economy Alliance, the Republic of Rwanda, the African Circular Economy Network, and CITRA have done an incredible job organizing this year's forum, and I know your discussions will make a difference in the future we are building. Thank you, and have a great 2022 forum.
It's great to see support from colleagues around the world. But now our focus is on Africa, as this is the World Circular Economy Forum that takes place on the continent and in the global south. The forum is not just happening here in Kigali, but also online and live in 5 African studios that help make the forum more relevant also locally. In Cape Town, Lagos, Lusaka, Yaoundé, and our event here in Kigali. To me, the title, From Africa to the World, really captures what we want to achieve during these 3 days. Africa can lead the world towards a more resilient economy through new forms of collaboration. The world can learn a lot from Africa, and African youth can drive the change, capturing the circular business opportunities. But we need to create an environment that allows them to do so. With proactive policies and enabling financing, Africa can leapfrog into the circular economy without the need to repeat the past mistakes of industrialized countries. As we know, African countries have successfully used mobile phone technology for many purposes, and the same is possible on a broader scale with circular solutions. The circular economy is key for tackling climate change and biodiversity loss. Both at COP27 and COP15, we are hearing more discussions around circularity. But the global resource use and circular solutions should be at the core of these discussions. I hope this forum will increase the global attention to circular solutions and their huge but still largely untapped potential. I'm confident that this forum will provide inspiring ideas and encounters that accelerate new forms of collaboration. I encourage you all to exchange ideas. This will help us establish prosperous economies and good living conditions for everyone, now and in the future.
Je suis confident que ce forum mondial.
I'm confident that this World Forum of the Circular Economy will boost the ideas to create new ideas. This is how we can accelerate the new forms of collaboration. So I encourage you all to exchange your views. Together we have the power to win and put in place prosperous economies where everybody will live in harmony today and in the future. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's a big thank you to Her Excellency, the Minister, for reminding us that investing in the circular economy is, in fact, investing in future generations. We heard Mr. Kaitinainen reminding us that the courage to act is what we need and to keep our eyes on the future. Both of them extending explicit invitations for us to share ideas and to use the space over the next couple of days as an opportunity to learn from each other. And of course, a big thank you to all the former hosts that we heard from today. Now, one of the things that we just want to spend 1 or 2 minutes on is how are you going to keep up with the program, because so much is happening.
Exactly.
And one of the ways that we want to help you do that is by inviting you to please download our mobile app. So if you are out in the lobby, you'll see there are QR codes that you can use, and I think on the screen from time to time, you'll see the QR codes coming up. And on that app, you will be able to keep up with the program. You'll be able to see all of the speakers and their bios. More importantly, you will be able to claim your share of voice. So you'll be able to send comments, send questions, to participate in the polls, to participate in the votes, and really be a part of this conversation. And ladies and gentlemen, especially to those who are joining us virtually, we really are creating one conversational space, and we're inviting you to please participate.
And that's not it. The conversation continues beyond these walls, beyond the screens, beyond the app, and takes place on social media as well. We invite all of you to go onto social media using the hashtag WCEF2022. We want to hear from you. Let's share the conversation. Let's make sure it extends. Yeah. Let's make sure that the insights shared across these next few days travel across the world, quite literally. Now, speaking of making noise, it's my honor to introduce to you this next session, the Trailblazers session. The moderator for this session co-founded Songhai Advisory over 12 years ago with the ambition of supporting investments into the African continent with analysis and advice supporting local knowledge. The next moderator is Kisi Ageman Togobo. I'd like you to welcome her to stage with me.
It's such a pleasure to be here. Murakaza Neza, thank you. Well, over the next 60 minutes or so, we're going to be walking the walk and talking the talk with the trailblazers that are really making change happen on the continent. You know, they say that before you criticize an entrepreneur, you had better walk their walk for at least a mile in their shoes. Because if you do that, if you do decide to criticize them, at least you'll be a mile away and you'll be wearing their shoes, which is quite circular. What we're going to do right now is to watch a video as courtesy of Citra, which will showcase 12 circular economy businesses across Africa. Thank you.
Africa has the ability to power the world into a circular future for 3 reasons: youth, tradition, and development. Young people are the future, and Africa has the youngest population in the world. As a major source of raw materials, Africa has the ability to reform material supply chains. And as a developing continent, Africa can leapfrog the most destructive parts of development to a more sustainable level. We gathered some of the coolest ideas from Africa. Check out these 12 and get inspired. Arena recycling industry, creating construction blocks from plastic waste. Cold hubs, providing communal refrigerated buildings powered by the sun. The compost kitchen, turning organic household waste into soil compost. DigiArt by Arab, turning construction waste into new low-cost buildings. Neat eco-feeds, using agricultural waste to feed insects, which in turn feed chickens. OKO Forests, promoting regenerative agriculture, cash crops, carbon credits, and blockchain for farmers. Rewoven, recycling textile waste into new products. Sabon Sake, creating organic fertilizer and biochar from agricultural bioproducts. Safi Organics, producing organic fertilizer locally in villages. Tekeya, matching stores with excess food with consumers and charities. We Center, properly recycling e-waste. VPOX, an easier method to make drinking water safe. Inspired? Read more about inspiring circular economy solutions from Africa. Visit www.citra.fi/Africa.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Citra, for showing that. It's just a handful of some of the amazing innovations that are happening on the continent. And it actually opens the way into the next part of what we're going to do, which is a poll. So now I'm inviting you, as the audience participants, to go onto the app and take part in a short poll for us to really get ourselves thinking about the issues that are important to circular businesses on the continent. So, without further ado, the first question, if I can have that pop up, please. So the first question on the poll is, so from the Footprints collection of 500 case studies, which country do we think has the highest number of circular businesses? Is it A, Rwanda, B, Kenya, or C, Nigeria? Could you vote, please? No conferring. Okay. Are we ready with the answers? Okay, so the answer is, it's Kenya. Correct. 62% of you were on point. So Kenya is the country with the largest number of circular businesses. Well done. All right, so the second question, if I could have that slide up, please. So, how much will the world economy need to spend to get to net zero by 2050? This is according to McKinsey. Is it A, $500 billion, B, $45 trillion, or C, $275 trillion? Which one do we think it is? Okay. A, B, or C? I think we're good to go with the answer for now. Ooh, well, most of you think that it's $45 trillion. It's actually not. It's not. It's actually the third option, $275 trillion, which is a lot of money, a lot of zeros. There's a lot of work to do. Yeah. Okay. So on to the third and final question, please. And that is, which sector has the greatest circularity potential according to the African Circular Economy Alliance's 5 Big Bets research? So which sector do we think? Is it A, agriculture, B, societal services, or C, construction? What do we think? I should say that societal services includes things like waste management, water and sanitation. Okay. I think we're good to go with the answer for this one. Wow. Okay, so 75% of you think it's agriculture and 25% think construction. It's actually not. It's the second option. It's societal services. Well, this is great because you're in the right space, because we're now going to go into the next segment, which is looking at the data, actually. So for the past 2 years, Footprints Africa has been working really hard to gather data from 500 circular economy businesses from across the continent. And to help me to unpick the data and to make sense of it, it's my pleasure to welcome Deborah Nate, who's one of the researchers at Footprints, to help us to understand. Wonderful. Deborah,
Hi.
welcome. Thank you so much for joining me up here.
Thank you, Kisi.
Good to have
it's a
you.
pleasure.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
So, Deborah, I know that you were born and raised in Ghana, also my country of origin. And, you know, we've had conversations about the circular economy and that circularity is actually something that's quite cultural in an African context. Could you share a bit more about your thoughts around that and the experiences and exposure you had to circularity growing up in Ghana?
Yeah, thank you, Kisi, and it's a pleasure to be here. So for me, before I started this research, circular economy has always been part of the culture growing up. So I would remember back when I was young, I mean, I'm still young, but then I would go to buy food, and I'm carrying a cup. You know, you bring your own cup, you bring your own bowl to get your food, and no one felt shy about it. It was just the normal thing to do. Right now, I know that my mom is buying her clothes with the intention that if Deborah gets to give birth, then I have rags. You know, it's funny, but then these things brings us together. They form the culture. They make us a people. And that's what's beautiful about the circular economy when we talk about it in Africa.
Beautiful. Thank you, Deborah. Yeah, that resonates very much with me as well. Okay, so looking at the data itself, if we could just go back to the preceding slide, please. Fantastic. So on this slide, it tells us that there's quite a heavy concentration of circular businesses in certain parts of the continent. So we can see in East Africa, Kenya, there's quite a number of circular businesses there, South Africa, and then also in West Africa, places like Nigeria, Ghana, and so on. Could you break down a little bit the data behind this and why we're seeing many more businesses in certain areas than others?
Yeah. Really, it's not a big science. I mean, I mentioned earlier that the circular economy is embedded already in Africa, right? But when we were collecting this data, it was much more about where are you connected to, who are the people you know, and where could you look more. So that was what happened, and that's why we are seeing the figures that we are seeing. But it's really interesting to see, because going through all these processes, it was an inspiring journey for me to connect with all these young people doing all these beautiful things across the continent, because most of them are young people.
Yeah. It's definitely for the future. Okay, so the second key trend that we identified is that entrepreneurs are fulfilling critical needs. I find this really empowering because it says to me that entrepreneurs are looking and seeing what issues are around and what solutions can be used to solve those issues. So the first point is that societal services seem to dominate. And as I mentioned earlier, societal services speak to waste management, energy, water and sanitation, and that's followed by agriculture and food. Thirdly, goods and services. Is any of this surprising to you, or was it surprising to you when you were unearthing the data to see that a lot of circular businesses are focusing on these three areas?
I think it's not surprising. So Africa, we know most of the countries in Africa have the issue of waste, and it's a prevalent issue already on the continent. So this data was rather revealing how young people or entrepreneurs have risen to the call, looked around, seen challenges, because we have issues with e-waste, with clothing, you know, so fashion waste. They saw all these opportunities, and then they decided to rise to the call and bring up solutions to solve these challenges. And it's really what we want to see and what the circular economy is about, not just making money, but also solving social issues around us.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Well, talking about the youth and momentum leads us into the third point, which is that circularity is building momentum.
Yeah.
And I was really encouraged to see that you were able to gather data from as far back as 1957. Yeah. But if you look on the graph, you can see that, you know, the dynamism was really happening from sort of 2010 onwards. And then 2018, 2019, there was a huge spike, and now it's dipped a little bit more. But what do you think is going to happen, Deborah? Looking ahead, you've spoken about the youth, you've spoken about, you know, job creation and so forth. Can we envisage a future where circularity is going to continue to have this level of momentum?
Yes, yes, I think we can. The fact that we are already here is proof that the circular economy is building momentum, right? We see that the numbers are so high in 2019, mainly because that was the reason, the time around which we started data collection. But also, I could say that that was a moment where people were now less mobile. They could see around them, they noticed the challenges, the opportunities that were around them, and decided to come up with solutions. So that is what really happened around that time. And when you speak to them, you'd see that people were really keen on solving these challenges. That's what happened. But there is more to come because, like I said earlier, circular economy is embedded in the culture. There were some examples that we could not even capture because they were just stuff that happened normally, right? You see, people do it and it's not institutionalized, and so you couldn't capture it as an example. But there is more to come. A lot of people are doing so much that we are yet to capture. We have more to capture yet in the central of Africa, a lot in the northern parts of Africa. So there's more.
Wonderful.
Really.
That's exciting. Thank you for that. Okay. Well, on the next slide, we are seeing that success depends on collaboration. You know, we hear a lot about collaboration, that we must come together, share ideas, learn, and this is very much the reason for all of us being here today, right? And within that, you found that government or policy support is critical. Research and analysis, obviously, it's really important. Without having the data, you can't plan, so that's key. And then obviously online platforms as well, being able to reach out. Now borders are much, much thinner because of technology. Was any of this surprising to you, Deborah, when you were collecting the data at all?
Rather than surprising, I would say it was beautiful to see this new group of entrepreneurs who were rising to the call and they were ready to work together. So when we were collecting the data, we built a lot of other programs around it, and you'd see that these young people or these entrepreneurs were ready to share, they were ready to learn from each other, and they were ready to grow together. So that's one play of the collaboration bit. And then there is also the bit of those that got support from policy, from government, which shows that we all need to bring hands on deck to make this work. It cannot be done by one person. So that is what this data is showing us, and it's really beautiful to see.
It's really encouraging to hear that, because sometimes you do hear of entrepreneurs saying that there's this notion of a lack of trust, actually. And so hearing this actually counters that it's stronger and you go further together, as the Kenyan saying tells us.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Okay, just two more headlines to share with you. So the penultimate finding is that interdependence with the informal sector is key.
Yes.
Round about 90% of the businesses that you profiled said that the informal sector is really pivotal to the work that they do. 41% said they are indispensable. 49% said they have a direct relationship with the informal sector. What does this mean, Deborah?
I think this means that, first off, it's depicting how the economy in Africa is highly informal, and a lot of stuff that is happening is by the informal economy. But it also a call for us to see that these people are part of the economy, they are part of circularity, and so how do we bring them to the table so that we are all working together? How do we not take them out, and how do we hear their voices as well?
Wonderful.
Yes.
I guess that goes back to the point of collaboration.
Yes.
Great. And so the last finding that we want to touch upon is the major barriers. So by a mile, access to finance has been listed as the major inhibitor. And it's something that we hear a lot about, but it's true. And sometimes you feel that money is a dirty word, that you can't talk about it, but actually there needs to be a real sort of deep tissue conversation about why access to financing is such an inhibitor for circular businesses and businesses generally on the continent.
Yes, yes. When we want to talk about the finance aspects, there are a lot of layers, right? We just need to be aware that this is a challenge, a fundamental challenge for businesses, not just for circular businesses, but for all businesses. And how do we talk about it? How do we support these entrepreneurs? Because really, without the finance, they cannot do anything. So how do we talk about it without letting it look like making people feel bad, and let people come full-chested to the table, talk about it. We need money to do what we are supposed to do and to achieve the goal, and different layers that we need it, and then that would help us to achieve the bigger goal that we want to achieve.
Wonderful. Well, Deborah, thank you so much for helping us to make more sense of the data. Please help me in thanking Deborah. Thank you. Okay, well, at this juncture, it's my pleasure to now invite up the panelists who are going to talk about their own journeys, their stories of circularity. So please could I invite onto the stage Mena Shahin, co-founder of Tekeya, Esetu Senga, co-founder of Rewoven, Kigen Compton, founder of BioBoo, and last but not the least, Klankla Ndolovu, founder of Hustlenomics. Thank you. Brilliant. Well, it's wonderful to have you all on stage here with me. Why don't we start off by each of you just introducing yourselves, introducing your business, and then we'll go into more of a discussion. Okay, so starting with you, Esetu.
Sure. Thank you so much, first of all, for the opportunity. Good morning, everyone. My name is Esetu Senga. I am the co-founder and CEO of Rewoven. And Rewoven is in the business of textile recycling. So essentially, we divert textile waste from landfill by collecting it from source, so before it gets to landfill, and then we ensure that it gets recycled. Just to say a little bit, a lot of our textile waste goes into products like blankets, filling material for upholstery, and so forth. But our real vision really is to create that circular loop in the clothing industry, and so have textile waste be made into fabric that can be made into clothing again, and so forth. But yeah, that's a little bit on Rewoven.
Brilliant. Thank you so much.
Good morning. My name is Kigen. I am the co-founder and CEO of BioBoo. BioBoo is an organic recycling company. We're the largest organic waste recycler in Tanzania. We take organic waste and we recycle it using insects. We turn it into insect protein and to organic compost. What we're doing is we're trying to replace environmentally unfriendly products in animal feed. That would be soy, fish meal, and any other high-protein substrate that is not sustainable. And on the compost side, it's important because the only way to reintroduce carbon into the soil is with organic fertilizer. And with soil conditions degrading, as farmland is overused through certain practices, we can't, organic fertilizer is going to be a big part of what we need to do.
My turn. I'm so happy to be here. Thank you so much for this event. And I'm Mena Shahin, co-founder of Tekeya. So Tekeya is a mobile application allowing food providers to sell their surplus food before it's waste with the 50% discount or more, or donate it to charity. Basically, we reorganize surplus food and make it accessible for all. And the idea is to do something like have a triple win. So the provider, they are generating profit, the user saving money, the charity having a free food, and they are all saving the environment at the same time. So we are combining all the stakeholders and making them having an environmental impact. And now we are actually moving up in the food value chain. We are piloting to have the user as the user could be the retailer or could be the restaurant, and the provider could be the wholesalers who need to sell a big amount of surplus food, and the restaurant can cook it the same day, or the retailer, we help him to sell it to customers. So we managed to save more than 40,000 meals on 2021, and we are expanding, and that's it.
Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Nhlanhla Ndlovu. I'm the founder of Hustlenomics. We are a for-profit, impact-driven social enterprise that's dedicated to replacing informal backyard housing with formal durable housing using innovative building technology. And we also provide an innovative financing model. We basically target low-income households who have informal backyard shacks and cannot access traditional home financing. And we give them the opportunity to replace these informal structures with formal durable housing using innovative building technology, where we train women and youth to manufacture interlocking bricks made from recycled construction waste materials and compressed earth bricks made from clay sand. And we then employ those women and youth to actually be the one that provide the service of building this formal housing. And we actually provide affordable rental for low-income earning tenants who are residing in these informal backyard shacks. And this also creates a sustainable rental revenue for the homeowners themselves, where at the end of the agreement, where we share the rental income with them for an agreed upon period, at the end of that agreement, they would obtain full ownership and have an income for their household. Thank you.
Thank you so much to all of you. Extremely impressive, the work you're doing. You haven't chosen easy fields to be working in, so, well done there. So just on that point, actually, of all the different ways to be engaging yourself, to be earning money, to be doing entrepreneurship, you've decided to use circularity as the business model. So if I can start at the beginning, really, what got you into circularity, Esetu?
So for me, being in the business of circular textiles, so I've always been passionate about fashion and clothing and textiles, not because of aesthetic reasons or how frivolous it is, which a lot of people tend to think, but on this continent, the way we've always seen clothing and textiles, it's kind of like an expression of our identity, expression of our culture, an expression of something intangible, and I've always connected to that. And so as a development economist, which is my qualification, I became very excited when in one of my courses, the case study was clothing and textiles, how clothing and textiles essentially aids to development. So I was like, this is exciting, I need to study this. This is like mixing my two passions together, development and textiles. However, then when I started really understanding how clothing is made, I really realized that it's quite exploitative to the people who make the clothing, but as well as the environment. And the way that the global value chain for clothing is set up is that a lot of the production happens in the global south. And so, unfortunately, a lot of the negative impacts of the production process are felt in the global south. And then a lot of the consumption happens in the global north. And so essentially, because I'm passionate about clothing, I realized that I couldn't continue being passionate about it, knowing the impact it has. And so I had to reconcile that by being in sustainable fashion. Mm-hmm. So then I knew I was going to be doing something in sustainable fashion, but what exactly? And so, my co-founder and I started kind of researching and understanding the clothing industry a bit more. And I was absolutely horrified when I found out how wasteful our clothing actually is. And a lot of people tend to be like, oh, well, I'm not really a fashion person, so I don't really care. But the reality is, today we're all sitting here wearing clothing. No one's sitting here not wearing any clothing. And so we're actually all part of the problem. Maybe we should know how this thing that's on our back is actually made. And so there's a lot of waste from the beginning beginning of the value chain, like spinning waste, then there's production waste, and then there's the clothing rejects, then there's the unsold inventory, which is burnt, and then we get to the textile waste that a lot of people know of, which is the secondhand clothing. And the stats are quite horrific. We're generating like 90 million tons of textile waste every year, and only 1% of that is recycled, when in reality, 97% of it is recyclable. And the problem has now become so bad that even on the African continent, even though we aren't big consumers of fast fashion, the spillover of the secondhand clothing problem from the West is now spilling over into African landfills in Accra, in East Africa, as well as in Southern Africa. And so I just felt really passionate about solving that problem. And so yeah, that's where my passion for circular business came. And then the more, as a development economist, I started understanding the potential of circularity. It's more than just diverting waste from landfill. It's also like, it's really labor intensive. And I come from a country that has an unemployment rate of 70% for youth in South Africa. And so it really became important that, you know, I marry how circular business in textiles can aid development. And I really think circularity can do that. And that was one of the main inspirations for me for entering the space that I'm in.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much for that, Esetu. There's so many different layers, and you've managed to, I think she does it very well. Brilliant. I mean, you touched on waste as a resource, and I think that's something common to all of us sitting here. And on the plane coming over, I'm sure most of you also experienced this, you know, offered tea and coffee, and then there was sugar and milk, which I didn't use. I gave it to the flight attendant, and I was hoping that they would, you know, put it somewhere and reuse it, but most likely it's going into the bin somewhere. So could you share a bit more, Mena, on Tekeya and using waste as a resource, and what really inspired you to get into that?
Yeah, so going back to the sugar thing, I'm Egyptian, and Tekeya is in Egypt, and we have this feeling or this concept that if you don't offer too much, it means you are not generous enough. Or if you are not offering, as an hotel, too much, you are providing a not high-quality service. And I was raised with this. And I was actually, when I started to be conscious about the food waste, about the problem of the climate change, I started to be sometimes worried, because if I'm offering the people like just enough, they will start to think, they will start to judge me. And they will start to think, oh, she's not generous, you know, this is just enough food. Yeah. And sometimes I was like preparing the table, I was putting the dessert and everything on the table to show that it's like, it's too much, but you don't know, you know, something like this. So it's, but it was shocking for us when many times we are in the restaurant, we want to eat, but they stopped the ordering and they just throwing a huge amount of food. And we were, okay, give it to us, let us give it to charity, and they're refusing. And then we started to do our researches, and we found out more than a third of the food being produced goes to waste. And it's a major contributor to the climate change. And to be honest, I also have a child, you know, I want him a better future for him. I have a family, I want less crisis, you know, I want to do something. And then we thought about Tekeya, and we were thinking how to do something. Everyone can be a contributor. So if everyone using our application, actually with their finger, they can change the world. And how to have a scalable business that can scale, can grow, can expand, and actually without a lot of physical presence, that you can move from scale and move from country to other country. So you are doing something that good, and the business and the environmental impact going hand in hand together. And this is where Tekeya came from. So, and that's why we have our application now.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for that, Mena. Thank you. And Kigan, if I can turn to you. You have a background in accounting, which feels like miles away from what you're doing now. Yeah. But you know, we're talking about food waste, talking about waste as a resource. So what inspired you to shift completely, almost, into what you're doing now?
I always wanted to work with something to do with the environment. Like, that has always been my dream. But you know, when you go to university, you know, I didn't really know how to sort of deliver that. So what do? I go and do accounting, which, you know, now is a really good skill to have, but at the time it was unbelievably boring. And as you can imagine, it's not hard, no offense to accountants, but it's not hard to imagine life more exciting outside of accounting. So, I was living in Dar es Salaam, and in Dar es Salaam, it's a really big city. I mean, it's 8 million people, give or take. And all of the waste was going to landfill, all of it. Like, not a single piece of organic waste gets recycled. And I met my current business partner, and we were going around trying to find out, how do we, what is the way for us to actually, change this? And we talked to some of the big waste producers, and without naming names, we met, as an example, we met somebody who, a juice factory, and they had about 200 tons of waste a day. And we asked them, so what do you do with this? And they said, oh, well, there's a valley down the road, we just go there and we dump it. And we're like, oh my God, that's horrible. And then, but it gets worse though. So then they went on to say, oh, but they let it dry out, and at the end of the season, they set fire to it. I was like, oh my God, this is horrible. Like, how can this be a solution? So I'd seen a documentary a long time before about, insects and what we can use them for. And I would say this is not my idea. Many smarter and, better people have gone before me and have tried to deliver this. And my partner and I agree that this could really work. And we're taking something, it's a very simple concept. It's so simple. You just take waste and you feed it to insects. How hard can this really be? It's a little bit harder than we thought, but it's been such a life-changing experience. Going from sitting behind a desk, and now I spend my days, elbow deep in larvae. I spend my days dealing with animals. I love it. I love it so much because we're actually taking. We are the biggest recycler of waste organic waste in Tanzania. We do around 50 tons a day. It is big numbers. And all of that is being diverted and not going to a landfill. I couldn't be happier and proud of where I've ended up, having sat behind a desk for most of my life.
Well done. Well done. Yeah. There's definitely a lot to be proud of. Yeah. Dankla, can I turn to you now? I know when we had a chat before, you were sharing about how you got into hustlenomics, that you had your own personal experience of housing in South Africa, and you wanted to be part of the change. Could you just share with us a little bit more about that, your personal journey, and how that inspired you to get into hustlenomics?
Yeah, so me being an entrepreneur or even going to the construction sector wasn't really a career choice. It's just a path that I was actually led in. So I grew up in a township, which is more of communities which are closer to the city. It's still an urban community. So those houses were built back then during the apartheid era. The houses used to belong to our grandparents. So our grandparents had our parents, so basically my mother, my uncle, and they had us. So you'd find each parent would have something like 3 to 4 kids. And we had to live in this 2-bedroom house with a kitchen and a living room, which is about 12 to 15 people living under the same roof. And if your parents are still present by then, they would have to take 1 bedroom and the rest of us would have to share the rest. And because I had my uncles, some of us would have to make our bed in the living room and sometimes in the kitchen. So you knew if you slept in the kitchen, you'd have to be an early riser because the rest of the people have to get turns to actually get time to prepare for school and everything else. So we were very close then. I was still young. I didn't understand what the challenge was. But as I grew older and I wanted to get a bit of a private space, I actually realized that we couldn't afford to actually extend the main house or build maybe an extension, which is we normally build bedrooms, which would be semi-attached units outside. Either you can accommodate family members or sometimes you actually rent it out to actually get added income. So I now understood the problem of why we actually had informal housing, because there's a lot of family members that had to share space and they couldn't afford to get credit or access traditional finance. So having to then have a personal shack, living in a shack is made of corrugated iron sheets, zinc. So you find that it's actually hot during summer, it's cold during winter, and somehow whenever it's a rainy season, the rain would basically find a way to make it rain on you. Not in a fun way, as in rain, it gets straight literal water. So having to live in that experience, I then got to understand whenever I was in my community and saw a lot of backyard shacks, I understood what the problem was. So I started trying to solve the problem for my own family. So I took it upon myself to actually become a bricklayer. This is because even if you qualified for credit, you would still have to pay someone to actually build the structure for you. So to cut the cost, I became a bricklayer. But once I started working and earning a minimum wage, we still didn't qualify to actually build the structure. So we ended up using the money, buying the material in small amounts. And a project that would normally take you something like 2 weeks to a month to build, it took us 4 years. because we had to get the money in small amounts. So when I was building, some of my friends also assisted me, and they had a similar challenge. They had shacks. So we came together and started building for my family and built for them. And then other families in the community started approaching us to actually assist them as well. That's how it actually started to become an informal business. And then as time went on, at first, initially when we started, we had the competitive advantage of being young, because normally it's the older generation that are actually using their hands to build and do all types of jobs. So that was the first advantage we had. But as time went on, we then had to compete with pricing. So that's how we came up with the concept of actually buying a brick-making machine to basically subsidize the cost so that we could make some profit from the bricks themselves, so if we had to bring down our cost of actually building. So that's how the initial idea started coming together. When we were looking for the machine, we then discovered the innovative building technology, which was interlocking bricks. The bricks themselves, when you're building, they interlock like your Lego bricks, so they cut your building cost by up to 30%. But we couldn't afford the machine at the time. We found a company that actually had the machine. That's how we discovered that it was a recycling company that was using the technology. So that's how we actually married the two, that you can actually use recycled material and make bricks, which is something people that are familiar with, and use technology to basically bring down the cost. At the same time, we were able to basically create a job for ourselves.
Okay.
Wow.
Very comprehensive. Thank you. Amazing, amazing. I mean, the common thread that I'm picking out from all of you is that you have constantly been innovating, responding to the changes, responding to the things that have been coming as you've been doing your businesses. And it makes me think about mindset change and the sort of pushbacks that you may have received, whether it's from consumers, from buyers, from funders, even from family and friends. What has that looked like, and how have you been able to sort of overcome the sort of pushback that you may have received from, because you're working in spaces that are very innovative, that are quite new. So could you shed some light on that for me? Would you like to kick off, Esheti?
Sure. So when we started about 4 years ago, kind of speaking to clothing manufacturers, speaking to people with textile waste, we realized that there was an interest in textile recycling, but people didn't actually really know what that involved. People felt bad about throwing fabric or throwing clothing away, but they didn't actually understand what it meant. So at the beginning, for instance, when we'd speak to large clothing manufacturers who are generating like a ton a day of fabric waste, bringing the service to them, they'd always be like, oh, if you can make the recycled fabric, is it like quality? Because we only use quality fabric. This idea that if it's recycled, it's inferior. And I'd always have to explain, like, no, it's like, the plastic industry. If you recycle plastic, and the end product can be of quality. So that was a big challenge at the beginning. And I realized that, as much as we want to come and plonk ourselves in the clothing value chain and say, hey, we're a recycler, people aren't ready for recycling. So another thing that would happen is, retailers would come and drop off their textile waste, and it's completely the wrong fabric type. It's not recyclable. So we realized that if we want to do this, we're going to have to educate the value chain. But because I'm a startup, we have to do that quickly. And so we had a trip to Sweden in 2019. And Sweden obviously knows a lot when it comes to sustainable technologies, green technologies, and so forth. And I think just the Nordic region in general. And I came from that trip so inspired. I was like, oh my God, we have to take this back to Africa. We have to take it back home, all of this knowledge, all of this technology that can help us be more sustainable. And then we essentially decided that we wanted to create another organization outside of my for-profit Rewoven organization called Rewoven. And that organization is called Future of Fashion. And so, and in partnership with the Swedish Institute and the Swedish Embassy. And the aim was to leverage, create a knowledge spillover between the global north and the global south as it pertains to this topic of circular economy, and then try to disseminate all of that knowledge as quickly as possible in the value chain. So every year I would have an event where we have manufacturers, retailers, fashion students, designers, people in policy and network, where we kind of try to leapfrog everyone and try to put them and share best practices when it comes to circularity in textiles. So that's one of the things that we realized that we needed to do, was an aggressive awareness building campaign. And then when I came back from Sweden, because I'd come back with this incredible passion of oh, Africa needs to learn from the West about sustainability and so forth. And then I went home to my grandmother's just for, December holiday. And when I was there, I realized in the rural areas in the Eastern Cape, and I realized that we have always been circular, like you were saying at the beginning. Like, we've always not really cared about waste. We don't see waste as a waste. We'll always find some, to make something from it. Everything is natural. Everything is so in tune with the environment. And I realized that, so as an African startup working in the circular economy space, it was very important for me to speak about sustainability and circularity in not a way that makes people feel like we have to learn this again. Because a lot of people that I was speaking to were like, oh, this is something new that now Africa has to learn. Now we have to still catch up again when it comes to circularity. And going to my grandmother's really made me realize that we need to change that narrative, that we've actually always been circular and always been in tune with the environment. It's just that we now need to find a way to go back to that. And I even spoke to someone who was saying that they moved from the rural areas to the urban areas, and they used to, make their own food and have their own garden, but they were told that that is, backward, and that now we buy from pharmacies and supermarkets. And I was like, that's the problem, like that's what we need to change. And so the organization that we did basically tries to make people relate to circular business in a way that they see it as part of themselves, as a way to kind of activate the community. So, one of the things that we did was have a short film that is basically talking about how sustainability has always been a way of being for us Africans. And we did that in indigenous languages, and we kind of disseminate that. So that's kind of some of the work that we do. And then I also think lastly is just the price conversation. That's been big with a lot of the customers that we have, trying to show them that it's not necessarily going to be, not cost competitive. I think us as a startup also trying to make sure that we work in innovative ways to make sure that the solution is actually, cost competitive and, speaks to our customers.
Thank you, Satya. Thank you. There's definitely so much that we can share, but I just want to pick up on a point that you made in terms of speaking the language, speaking the right language. And that's something that we hear a lot about, especially when it comes to accessing financing or, just being able to speak the language of the investors. So, Mena, I know we had a conversation about that earlier. Could you shed some light on the strategy that you use in order to speak the language and translate the message clearly to your stakeholders?
So basically, when we started our idea, we thought everyone will be interested, It's like a no-brainer. You will just join us. And then we started to talk with the provider and restaurants, and they are just clapping for us. They are so happy, but they are really not interested to join. And we were saying what we are doing wrong, Even there is like similar models in Europe. It's spread very easy, and what we are doing wrong. Till we realized that we need to change the language we are speaking. So show them the money, we started to show them, okay, you can be more profitable, you can have more revenue if you actually follow on our model and joined us. And we started to build a calculation model, showing them exactly, so tell me how much you waste, tell me what product you produce, tell me your price, and showing them exactly monthly how much they're going to make. And then they became interested, and then they actually became interested in the cause. So all our effort to increase the awareness, to make them feeling the cause, it didn't really resonate with them. But when we started to talk business, it's really these really became interested, and it was much easier for us. And then we tell them, okay, and what about doing a campaign together, so we can show how you are a very good provider and doing good for the society. So this is nice to have, let's do it. And what about that? Okay, we have more than 100,000 downloads, and there will be a lot of users that they will join us, and they might be interested also in your fresh food. Okay, this is interesting. And then also we are building a new application that having gamification and point system to be more interested to the new generation, and to make the new, if people buy more surplus, they actually might buy more fresh food from you. So this is how we managed to do it, because we thought it's going to be an easy journey for us, but it wasn't at all. And now it's becoming easier and easier. And as we said, we shouldn't be ashamed of talking about numbers and money and business, because we were talking about that yesterday. Because if you're gonna have an impact, you need to generate profit. You need to be sustainable. You need to be scalable. You need to be able to grow. And this is so important. And numbers is so important. Like, it's not just number of impact, it's number of money moving, number of profit you generate, number of people will sign with you, and your traction. This is all important numbers, and you need to keep eye on it, and you need to have target, and you need to increase them all the time. So that's our journey, and I hope anyone listening here learn from it.
Wow, thank
because
you,
we learned it the hard way.
Sure. Thank you. Wow. I want to leave a bit of time for us to have questions from the floor. So I'm hoping that the questions will pop up here. But in the meantime, if I can turn to you, Kigen, what has been shared has been really powerful. And there's so many things that, as entrepreneurs, you're doing all at once. How have you managed to keep sane at the same time, doing the marketing, doing the financing? Of course, you have a background in accounting, so maybe that has helped, being in front of the investors and so forth. How have you managed to maintain balance, if at all?
I think it's changed a lot over the last 6 years. I think initially, there was no balance. It was very long days constantly. You had no social life. My wife wasn't happy with me. It was, it was a lot of stress. It was a lot of pressure. And I think, over time, you start to realize, this isn't sustainable. Like, you can't keep doing this long term. But luckily, over time, you also start to see things like more revenue, more experience, more learning. So you start to think, okay, I need to build a team around me. And finally, I think once you get to that level where it's okay to hire somebody, it's okay to delegate. Because I think all of us, we've talked over the last couple of days, like, delegating is very hard because it's your baby. You know best, and you spent your life doing this. This is your dream. It's rare to find, staff that also believe in that dream. So you need to get to that point where you can actually you source staff, properly, people who want to help you deliver this. And at that time, you can start to say, okay, my life starts returning to normal. I start to get more sleep. I start to, I can actually have a social life again. But it's always going to be difficult, I think, being, a CEO or co-founder. Yeah. I think because it is just part of the job, and I think people have to accept that. And I think, when you talk about, funding, I think that it reflects in, over the journey, you meet those people and they start to see, who they're investing in. Because I'm a big believer in that they don't invest in the company, they invest in the person. So if you can show that you've had all these learnings and you're starting to have a balanced life, it means that you're in this for the long haul. And I know my investors, the first investor I met him in year 2, and I showed him a business plan for $80,000, and he politely said no, thank you. And then 5 years later, I approached him again, and just having survived this long, he was then happy, to come in as an equity investor. So I think, that it is about time, and it's about, being able to, start meditating and all these things, because you might feel crazy at times. And it's the people around you that are important, your support systems are so important, your family, your friends. I think it is about trying to figure out who you are and how to balance that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. These are important life lessons, and it sounds like, you may have to get to a point of, that difficult space before you then realize, actually, this is not quite tenable. I need to change the way I do things. Okay, I would love to see if there are any questions from the floor. I'd love to take them. So the lady at the front, if you can just quickly state your name, your affiliation, and ask your question, please.
A very good morning to you all. Quite a delightful conversation. I'm Dr. Gamotrai Motezo, and I'm affiliated with the African Circular Business Alliance. My question is to all of you. When it comes to accessing funding, especially as entrepreneurs, you see your ancestors through the process. Firstly, to what extent did you invest your own capital? It could be in terms of sweat equity. And secondly, what was that experience of identifying suitable investors? Where did you go? Who did you speak to? Did you throw some bones in the process? What was it like? Thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone like to take that question?
Yeah, I'd be happy to.
Okay.
So for me, when I began my journey, as crazy as it was, I received a lot of support from my mother personally, And our first exposure was having to pitch in a competition and having to win that competition for just having an idea. That actually gave me a lot of credibility, especially with friends and family, where my mother took my concept and actually told it to the church congregation, and they all started contributing because they now saw the vision that I actually had due to the fact that I actually won a competition with just an idea. And just from that, and actually having to meet other people from those programs, they then recommended other programs, and we started developing the idea further, where with other programs, we're not even ready just as yet to receive the funding. But because we kept being on the path and being persistent, you would see that maybe 3-4 years later, they would then come back and actually give us access to grant funding. So for me, we started with friends and family, and then we've received a lot of grant funding to develop the idea further. We're only now in a phase where we're actually getting investment ready. We actually discovered that going from an informal business to a corporate structure, there's a lot of systems and processes that I didn't even know about initially at first. And we had to focus on sorting out our accounting systems, our legal structure, our compliance, especially since we're in the innovative buildings sector. So it took us quite a while to actually become investment ready before we can even attract investors or even get equity investors. So that was actually my journey, where I started with about 30 to 40 family members who all contributed about 1,000 each. I was actually shocked when some of my mom's friends contributed about 5,000. And you now have to be accountable for people actually believing in your vision. Even when you're down and out, you actually pick yourself up because someone's going to ask you how the journey is actually going. So that was my own personal experience.
Brilliant. Thank you. Well done. Does anyone else want to take that question?
I can just add, it's hard to find, when you have an impact business, you need to find the right investor, because there's some investors or VCs or people you talk to and you start talking about the impact, and then they will start to say, but are you charity? You need to have you need to be a deep discounted app, or you will hear things like this. So especially for impact business, we thought we should approach all the investors or any investors, but my highlight or my learning is that no, there is specific type of investors, there is specific type of VCs that you need to talk with them and you need to approach them, and you need to do your homework to know which investors is interested in your region, which investors are interested in impact or can understand it. Because you also you need to prepare everything, like financial model, you need to show them your numbers, you need to talk their language, but still you need to find the right ones.
Yeah. To follow on from that, I think that is the ideal situation. It's people that who are on board and understand your idea. But I think also I've been in a situation where you may not like the person, you may not like what they do, but you are broke, and you need the money. So you have to say, how much do I want to deal with this person, and how much do I need the money? And most people, I took the money because I need the money, So I want to be able to work with people who are ideal. But sometimes times get desperate.
Okay, panelists, I'm so sorry, we're almost out of time, in fact, but just in 10 seconds, parting words, what would you say to yourselves, a younger version of yourself that would be going into starting up a business? Just a parting comment, what would you say, Esetu?
I think in a true African way of seeing things, when I started Rewoven, I was really young, and so I was very overwhelmed by just the vision and what it would take to do that, until I realized that I don't have to do everything by myself, and that collaboration is incredibly important, relying on knowledge systems that already exist, and just really trying to make this a group project actually alleviates a lot of pressure, and it helps the project actually move a lot further along. So that was one of the biggest things that for me is collaboration.
Thank you. Collaboration, Keegan?
It's going to take longer than you think. Somebody told me when I started this, they told me it'll take 5 to 7 years for you to start this business. I laughed in their face and told them I can do it in 3. I'm on year 6 now, so it'll take long.
Minna?
So for me, I will say that what my co-founder in business and my partner and in business and life, my husband, is always telling me, be kind. Be kind to yourself. So I'm a competitive person, and I always sometimes punishing myself if things didn't go my way. Even I couldn't do anything more than that. And this is something I would love to, like, if my younger self, I would say the same for her, you know, like, be kind to yourself, everything will be okay, you will manage, you did your best, and, like, believe in yourself and, like, move, you know? Keep moving, and that's it.
Thank you. Kangra, last word.
I think I'll also touch on collaboration. Working in a silo makes the journey very, very long. It took me 7 years to get to this point. Had I learned early to collaborate with people that complement my skills, I think we could have actually moved a little faster.
Wow. Everyone, this has been so thrilling, and I wish we could continue. We definitely could continue for much longer, but we have to wrap up now. So, ladies and gentlemen, please help me to thank our amazing panelists for their contribution. Okay, brilliant. So it's for me to bring onto the stage, call onto the stage, footprints researcher Deborah Nate and Matthias Reusing, head of sector for the European Green Deal, Rural Development and Trade, just to share some details of an upcoming initiative of the European Union. Thank you.
Thank you, Cassie. Hi, Matthias. I'm good, thank you, and good to have you here. I guess I'm back here in another role. We're going to speak quickly about the EU's role in the eastern and southern parts of Africa. Do you mind telling us why European Union is interested in supporting the circular economy in these parts of Africa?
Good, Deborah. It's certainly not about my name, because my name is reusing, so it's not about that, but it's about this one. So our top political priority for the European Union and the member states is the European Green Deal, our growth strategy to become the first carbon-neutral continent by 2050, and the Green Deal has a circular economy action plan as part of it. We don't want to look only at Europe, we also want to look at the rest of the world. That's why we built these international partnerships, and one of them is a strategic partnership for Africa Circular Economy Alliance, which we joined in February this year. We have a lot in common. I think the change, the transition from linear to circular is something which gives us new jobs, which gives jobs for the youth, innovative jobs, which gives us the diversification of the economy, which we aim for while we recover our economies. And since we come from COP27 to COP15, there's a link to more sustainable use of natural capital and also less emissions.
Right, thank you. I think the key part for me is the collaboration bits, that we are going to do this together. But do you mind telling us what is the main objective of this program?
We have to look at this map a little bit, and this map shows in dark green those countries which we cooperate as the European Union on circular economy already, and the lighter green ones is a little bit some countries which are interested, and the gray ones not so much so far. So you see this yellow circle. We want to focus on East and Southern Africa to start with. And here's basically what we want to achieve. I just go to these 4 arrows. These are the 4 components. We want to look, and we talk about so far a 40 million euro program. We hope we get additional co-finance. So we want to look, of course, at the business enabling environment, investment, climate. We heard it a lot. That's important. We want to focus on priority value chains, 2 of the 5 big bets for Africa. Packages and plastic waste, electronics and e-waste. It's nice in your presentation, your research, you talked about the services, so we are in the middle of that. We have to look at skills, and we have to think circular with e-platforms and whatever to develop skills. And the most important, and that's where most money will go, is a matching grant fund for exactly you, for the startups, for the small and medium enterprises, for joint ventures between African countries, but also with European countries. So the principles, we want to promote South-South cooperation. Those countries, Rwanda is one of them. It's great to have the minister here to pull the other African peers along. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. You can basically just learn from others' experience. Kenya has also had South Africa. That's what we want to do. So encourage South-South cooperation. Of course, technology transfer with Europe as well. We want to get additional finance through the investment banks, let's say EIB and the others. We need that, the global gateway, Europe-Africa investment packages there. And of course, we want to integrate green and digital, which is part of it.
Thank you. I think the key part for me is the financing bit, because aside finance being a challenge for all businesses, secular businesses are finding it hard to get their merchant financing organizations. Thank you. So before we leave, do you want to tell us what the timeline is and what you need from us?
I just show the timeline, but what I'm going to tell you, we start formulation now. You see we are at formulation. We need African countries to cooperate. So these 2 days, 3 days we want to use for that. We need to better understand the private sector needs, their shortcomings, their opportunities. We need partners, co-financiers. We need the banks. So we need everybody at different levels. And then at the end, we need from the private sector the best proposals to compete in East and Southern Africa on circular economy and to innovate your peers in other countries. And we saw a lot here in this panel, which was wonderful. So we want to start with providing access to finance, which seems to be one of the main bottlenecks.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing. And we look forward to more of these supporting programs for circular economy businesses on the continent.
Absolutely.
We'll speak more during the event. I'll hand over back to Kissy. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, all too soon, we've come to the end of the Trailblazers session, and it's been brilliant. I really feel that I've come away with a lot. I've definitely written down a few things. First of all, the change is here. We're all a part of it. Collaboration is definitely something that we all have heard a lot about. It's got to be a joined-up approach with multiple stakeholders. Sometimes we will have to have the difficult conversations around accessing finance, but it's necessary. We've heard about resilience for the future. We've also heard from the entrepreneurs that we've got to be kind to ourselves, that we've got to take our time, that you have your ambitious plans, but know that it takes time to get to where you want to get to. And then also, I would say a parting comment is that, we've heard the phrase that all you need is love to make the world go round, but maybe it's circularity. That's what we need. Thank you so much for your attention.
And this is how we conclude the first session of today that was so aptly named Trailblazers. I mean, I had the same notes, but one that really stuck out for me was that circularity is embedded in our African culture. Now, if any of you were interested in any of the topics that were discussed today, they are going to be accelerator sessions taking place on Thursday. You can find them all on the app, as well as on the schedule on the website. And for example, there's an accelerator session on increasing circularity in fashion. We've also got an accelerator session on the future of the built environment, looking at construction specifically, and a whole lot more. So make sure that during the break that is coming up right now, you have a look at that and that you participate. So speaking of the break, we're going to take a short break in the Kilimanjaro room just next door here, and we'll be back here at 12 o'clock sharply for the next session, Circular Economy for Climate and Nature. Thank you.